You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast, hosted by the founder of Better Beings, Michelle Zellner. Michelle's experiences have equipped her with knowledge and perspective, and for nearly 3 decades, she has been informing, influencing, and inspiring thousands on their journeys. This show spotlights guests of diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise, but they all align with Michelle's purpose and passion to help you be a better human being. There is something for everyone on their way to a healthier, happier life. Enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning into the Be a Better Being podcast. This is episode 136, being released on April 28th. We are wrapping up Stress Awareness Month, and we are going to be shifting into Mental Health Month, which is precisely why I invited our next guest to come on the show. Kayla Logue is a personal development coach. She is an author and a speaker. She grew up on St. Simon's Island, Georgia, and her mom instilled in her the belief that no dream is too big. And while she believed that as well, Kayla eventually found herself stuck in a version of herself that she did not recognize. Chasing the illusion of perfection, I love that phrase because I use that all the time, and following a path with no goals led to a surface level fulfillment with no real joy. So through an extensive growth journey, Kayla embraced her imperfections and faced challenges unafraid and unapologetically authentic, resulting in success and limitless happiness. And part of her journey includes journaling. And we're going to talk a lot about journaling because I think it's a really valuable way to have that growth and insight in your personal growth and development, but also just a good way to get thoughts out of your head because we weren't designed to keep them all up in there. So we are going to dive into all of the things. And what you're going to realize, listener, is that while Kayla is what I would consider the YBI, Young, Beautiful, and Invincible category, she truly has already lived quite a life and figured some things out. And she uses her skills and talents and experiences to help professionals and entrepreneurs tap into their confidence, to be able to sculpt their own destinies and redefine success on their terms. So Kayla, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. What a great introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, I mean, you're the one with all the credentials. I'm just saying what they are. So thank you for having the skills and talents that you have. And having gone on that journey at such a young age is, I think, fantastic because I always tell people, the sooner you figure it out, the longer you get to benefit from figuring it out. So let's do this. Let's go back and just give us a sense of what that upbringing was like. It sounds like you had an incredible support and role model in your mom. Just tell us a little bit about, what all those details were, and then we'll get into what you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, definitely growing up, I played sports a lot, which I think really evolved and shaped me into, the characteristics and the foundations of the hard work and, the mentality. For a long time, I called it the athlete mentality, so rub some dirt on it, suck it up, which is, really good for resilience and strength. But ultimately, more on the mental health side, I definitely push things kind of aside. But ultimately, growing up, I had an amazing support system. My mom, my dad, my sister were all very close, still very close, but they definitely raised us in strength. So it was, you never give up on yourself and, really kind of re-identifying what that looked like. And when I hit that moment of in 2020, really realizing that I was just chasing a life of perfection and really just focusing on checking off the boxes of society rather than defining, creating, and checking off my own. And so I left my ex-husband. That was not a good relationship. Left my job that I was capped out in, took $900 and just started over and was like, I'll figure it out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going, but I trust myself to, at least endure the road that I know was more authentic and kind of focusing on finding that way. But journaling became a very, very practical tool and honestly a life-changing tool for me during that time with healing and defining clarity and, really getting to know myself much better on a much deeper and really important level.
That's incredible. I want to circle back to your life as an athlete. What kind of sports were you in?
So when I was younger, gosh, I did everything: soccer, swimming, softball, anything. I rode horses, gymnastics. And then as I got older, I really just focused on swimming. So I swam competitively until I was all the way through high school, and then played softball all the way through high school and started in college as well. So it was every weekend, all the time, at softball tournaments, traveling here, there, practicing. I mean, I think back, it was funny. I was talking to a friend yesterday. We were talking about like kind of reflecting on the travel days and stuff. And gosh, it was exhausting, but super, super fun.
Yeah. So I was a competitive gymnast growing up and have lots of people, ex-athletes, people who had engaged in sports. And I think hands down, every one of us says how valuable being in a sport is because of all the different things it does teach you. And, the lessons that you learn that have nothing to do with your sport, but really are foundational for life skills can really be developed during that time. And to your point, it can also shape us in maybe not such great ways that might not be really beneficial for a well-balanced life later on. So, talk about this epiphany that you had and maybe for context, like a little bit, details of what age you are and how that all came about at what I would say is a relatively young point in your life.
Yeah. So it all kind of happened in 2020. And of course, it wasn't just like one day I woke up and I was like, I'm miserable, right? It was things over time that I started realizing I was constantly, it took me a while to actually realize why I hit that breaking point. And as I reflected back and kind of looked back, I found myself constantly just kind of daydreaming and living kind of in my dreams rather than making my dreams my reality. And so that went on for over a year until I finally was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was 25 at the time. So, kind of middle of the 20s, again, living that kind of like home style, picture perfect life. My ex-husband was very attractive. We had great friends. Our families were amazing, had 2 houses, had the dog, lived in Old Town Alexandria. It was beautiful, but it just, nothing felt right. Every single day felt more and more uncomfortable and just stuck. And so yeah, that epiphany definitely made me, it was either I stay here and I just keep going through the motions of life, or I make the choice to essentially completely start over and start living for myself. And again, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like what drove you to do it? And if I say that like, oh, it was all these things that I was thinking of, it's not true. I just knew that wasn't it. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I'd be going. 4 years later now, I'm a multi-unit franchise owner with my new partner, and it's amazing for Jet Set Pilates. And I have a nonprofit that's all focused around mental and physical health. And I've worked in luxury real estate. So I've done all these things over the past 4 years that I would have never experienced if I just stayed. And I think that's what's really important when I talk to people. I'm like, if you're not living the right life, or if there's something that is really just not fulfilling you, you may not know what that next step is. And sometimes you don't have to know, but you are one choice away from trying something new and ultimately possibly living a much more fulfilling life.
Well, I think it speaks to my adage, hard now or harder later. So you, as a very young woman, decided to pick hard now, because I can imagine how hard it was to leave what seemed like the perfect life. And my guess is you also got a lot of pushback or questioning about that, maybe some judgment about what you were about to do. So talk a little bit about those dynamics that were going on during this process for you.
Yeah. And, I appreciate you even kind of highlighting that, because a lot of people skip over that. I mean, subconsciously, it, right? But at the same time, I now really it doesn't bother me what other people think. If I know it's best for me, ultimately me being the best version of myself is going to help other people. And that's where I prioritize. But yeah, being a 25-year-old kind of lost stuck, leaving, getting a divorce after only being married a couple years, it's not a good look, and everything was really essentially a failure. And of course people are like, well, why don't you just try to work it out? Why don't you fix this? And ultimately not everybody knows the ins and outs of the relationship. And, I'm not somebody to throw anybody under the bus or go into those details, because that really isn't super important at this point. It's just, I realized that this wasn't going to work for me and I made the decision for myself. But yeah, the judgment was hard, and ultimately it was heartbreaking no matter what, because, when you make a choice to leave a long-term relationship, or even if it's a job, like everybody's situation is different, you do lose friendships, you lose family members, you choose that, and you realize you may never see those people ever again. And it's terrible. Honestly, it's not easy. It does suck, but you have to make a choice. And at the end of the day, you can't hang on to things that are essentially kind of out of your control. What's in your control is focusing and prioritizing what is best for you. And when you can do that, again, you truly do become a better version of yourself for other people. And I am a believer that until you are the best version of yourself, or you're continuing to grow and become the best version of yourself, you're just not going to be able to show up for other people to your full capacity or be able to do things for them either. So.
And listeners, yet another reason why she's on this show, because I know you've heard me say that, I don't know, probably every episode, because it's true. I love being validated by a guest who I literally have never met except for about 13 minutes ago. So, and coming from somebody so young as well, like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, Michelle, it's because you're 52 and you've lived a life. Okay, but you know what? Here's someone who's half my age and she's figured it out. So kudos to you. Let's talk about how all of that was impacting your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. This version of you that you didn't recognize. What did she look like? What was she doing? How was she feeling? And then let's talk about what the true, authentic version of you who's living the life now. How is she different?
Yeah, I mean, then I would say rather than just, I was going through the motions of life, not truly living. And I know there's a ton of people that probably feel that way. They don't really want to admit it to themselves, but until they do, you're going to just keep going through the motions of life. And it just becomes uncomfortable. That stuck, suffocated feeling is the most uncomfortable feeling ever. And I never will allow myself to feel that way again. And ultimately the work I'm doing is to empower other males and females, young professionals, anybody really that feels stuck and, you know, feeling like there's more for themselves to never just stay there. And I know how gross it really feels. And I just don't want anybody else to feel that way. And so really that's kind of like where the work started. And when I chose to leave, it was very liberating. It was heartbreaking, but it was liberating. I write that in my book. And, you know, for me, when I first left, I was very confused. Again, of course, like I have no money, I have no job, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that this was the right decision. And I felt that in every ounce of my being. So I did a lot of running, a lot of long distance running. And I'm not a runner. Softball players would sprint to, you know, home to first base and then we break. So long distance running was not a thing for me. And I was running miles and miles in a day. And I found myself just constantly repeating thoughts going through my head every single day on the run. But I wasn't processing them. They were just going through my mind. And that's when journaling became a tool. I thought it was a really stupid idea. I really did. I was like, there's no way a 25-year-old with a long overdue diary, this is going to be helpful at all. Wrong. Very wrong. My sister was the one that was like, just start journaling. She was very adamant about it. And I finally just gave in, and I'm like an all in or all out type of person. So, I mean, word vomited about like 10 pages of just stuff that I had been feeling and things that I really didn't want to admit to myself. And that was really groundbreaking for me because I realized how great it felt, how much clarity I kind of had just even in that one journal entry. It was a long one, right? It was like purging essentially. And then it just became more of a practice. And the amount of clarity, the amount of things I manifested through those pages and, you know, really started to build out goals and become clear on what I really wanted to do and why I wanted to do it and start setting a path for how I would start to achieve these things. And so now, you know, even with my nonprofit Move Into Words, journaling is a huge tool we advocate for young professionals. We provide journals at every event that we host. So yeah, it's such a simple 5-minute life-changing practice. Anybody can do it at any time, any point of the day, and give yourself 5 minutes of intentional work. It'll change your life.
I totally agree. I've been advocating for people getting thoughts out of their head for probably close to 20 years. And that's because humans aren't designed to figure it all out in our heads, especially not by ourselves, right? So journaling is like the first time to brain dump, to just offload. And I think a lot of people get hung up on, I don't know what to write.
Yeah.
You write what's in your head. You write what comes to mind. You write anything. There is no right or wrong way. But to your point, it's just the act of doing it. And once you start to do that, you get to see all the things and you can sort some things out. You can connect some dots and you can see some patterns and have to, you know, start to have some of these maybe bigger aha moments that can then help you figure out, okay, now what? I would imagine, you know, a lot of people maybe in a situation like yours where they're feeling stuck or not really feeling fulfilled, or to that point, going back to a previous guest in March, my friend Toverly, kind of same question, like, is there more? Or is this it? Like, is this all there is, or is there more? And when you ask that question, is there more? The answer is very often yes. And then it's about determining, okay, well, what does that look like for me? And then how do I maybe go about achieving that? I would venture to guess that fear is one of the big things that holds people back from doing it, right? Because there's security, and I'm putting that in air quotes, in the real job. There's security in the relationship versus the fear of being on your own, right? We have this sense of security, and I'm going to tell you it is a false sense, because nothing is secure ever, no matter what, never ever. And yet we stay in that because it's familiar. And the unknown, even though it potentially could be so much more amazing, it's unknown. And what we do is we assume it's going to be worse. We can't imagine it could be better or amazing to a certain degree. And I think that's just part of our protection mechanism being built in, right? Because if I don't leap into the fear, well, then I can't get disappointed. I can't get hurt. I can't fail. And if I do, then there's the potential for all of those things. And those things are yucky. We don't want to have them, happen to us, or we don't want to experience those things. And yet, if you never do it, you clearly will never achieve that. So you decide to make all of these big changes. Let's talk about the support that you had along the way. Because while there's going to be naysayers and people who are judgmental and all the things, I would also assume that you had a great deal of support.
Absolutely. And I mean, even going back to the beginning when I talked about my family has always been extremely supportive. They're, of course they love me unconditionally, but they don't sugarcoat things either. They give me the unbiased opinion of, try this, or how are you feeling, and things along those lines. It's not just, oh, it's okay. It's like, we'll figure it out, essentially. And when I also, the way I was raised, it was kind of definitely more of a radical responsibility mindset and approach. And as I've grown, I continue to embody that, because ultimately we are the cause, problem, and solution for everything in our lives. And when we can really channel that into our mindset, like, your world does change. And so when I left, I told my family, I was like, I want your love and support, but I don't want your help. I need to figure this out for myself. And I think when people can really, take that type of responsibility for their lives too, fear, of course, is a factor, no matter what. The unknown, we don't know what it is, but I would much rather throttle myself into discomfort than stay in the comfort of something that isn't really fulfilling. And when you can really embody that approach, it's super important. And then, with support, I think it's really important to have a couple people, because if you start seeking too many people and seeking validation on a large level, I mean, you're just not going to get it. Pleasing everybody is impossible. So finding those people that really are your ride or dies, and the people that will be there no matter what, are super important. And then also surrounding yourself in an environment on a larger scale, a community that, really does have the same values that you do. If you're wanting to better yourself, you're not going out to bars every weekend. So it's really kind of putting yourself in the right environments, the right places. And I really did start to, especially as I'm starting to build these businesses and, have a larger profile of things that I'm wanting to achieve, that's where my priority and focus has even started to evolve. But through the whole process, I've really prioritized the relationships that are near and deep to me, and that I know I'll support them no matter what. They'll support me, and not really focusing on the external validation, but really, more of that internal reference point and leading with that.
I love that. I want to just reiterate something that you said, because I want to make sure everybody hears it. We are the cause, say it again. We are the cause.
This is with a cause, problem, and solution.
Thank you.
To everything in our lives.
That's right. We are the cause, problem, and solution to everything in our lives. I mean, I say that about myself. Every single thing that's happened in my life, I've been there. Mm-hmm. I at least have some degree of personal responsibility. Sometimes it's a small degree. Sometimes it is gigantic. But you have to acknowledge your own, role in every single thing, and every choice you make, and every decision you do or don't make, right? That is going to be the catalyst to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I love how you phrase it, to sculpt the life that you desire. I don't know if you can see it. You probably can't see it. It says she designed a life she loved.
I love that.
Because we are the architects, right? We really are. And I think too often we fall into this idea that things happen to us, or I have to wait for something to happen, or for someone to do something for me before this can happen. We are truly in control of our thoughts and our actions, and those are the things that are going to lead to the outcomes. And you're not supposed to know it all. And I think this is maybe maybe one of the downfalls that I don't know if your generation does this, but I know my generation was like, what are you going to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? I had no idea what I wanted to be. And I always felt maybe like I'm not evolved, or I'm not smart, or I'm not as like advanced as all these other people who know what they want to be, because I had no idea. Guess what I'm doing, not at all what I thought I'd be doing, because this didn't even exist back then. So this idea that, you should know what you want to do, what you want to be. Yes, let's have some ideas, but I think it more comes down to, what is interesting to you? What is curious to you? Where are your skills? Where are your strengths? Where's your passion? What excites you, right? And then you find that career path, because most of us are going to want to earn a living. And if we can tailor that with the things that really do fulfill us, you will have, so much more joy, fulfillment, and you will be healthier, because all of this comes back to your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So let's talk a little bit about specifically physical, mental, and emotional well-being, and how that changed as you got unstuck from this life of chasing perfection and this life of just checking off the boxes to now where you're evolving into truly living the life that you want to live.
Yeah. I think the biggest way to kind of summarize is that I finally gave myself permission to be and live and do as I wanted. I didn't really, I wasn't focusing on external thoughts or what I felt like I had to be doing or people pleasing or anything else. Like, I was doing what felt right. And I quickly realized what felt wrong and would make adjustments. And so it's really being very in tune with yourself and realizing like what your values are. Like, what do you really want and why? And if what you're doing doesn't align with that, then the fulfillment level is always going to be very low. And sometimes, kind of like you, like, I didn't think I would be doing what I'm doing. My life has been up, down, up, down, up, down. And, I have all these titles and credentials, and I've worked very hard to achieve all of them in a very short period of time. But what I also really realized is, for me, like, I've gone from somebody that I felt kind of, right off the rip was focusing more on consumption. How much more can I do? What can I do? What can I continue to achieve? Rather than the contribution level of like, how much more can I make an impact? And like, with my skills and what I've done, like, I know I can help a lot of people. And how do I reach them? And what would make the biggest difference and why? Where do I know there's a gap that needs fulfilled? And as I've started really kind of like transitioning into that and knowing like where my strengths are and my credibility in the health and wellness space, like, that's been huge. And not just for helping other people, but also for my own mental, physical, and emotional well-being. And I think that's really important, but also, coming down to like, personally, habits are very, very important, and checking in on like your daily routines and what do you do daily? Like, what are you putting in your body? Are you exercising? And checking in with that type of stuff, because I think a lot of the times we also like to, be like, make excuses for, it's okay, I can start this tomorrow, or, I can, pick this up. Like, no, no, that's not how it works. It's checking yourself and staying in a line with, okay, if this is my big goal, what do I need to do to get there? And that does require you to be not just the best, but healthiest version of yourself too.
100%. She's like a little mini Michelle here. I'm loving this. I'm loving it. This really gives me a lot of hope, because, young people, like I referenced the YBI, the young, beautiful, and invincible. That's generally under 35 years old, who can, eat crap, drink all night, not sleep, not exercise. And, we're still amazing. Look at us. Like, of course we can live a rock star life and we're awesome. Yeah. And it's not going to stay that way, but they can't believe it, right? Like, it's so hard to understand that the choices you're making in your 20s are going to show up in your 30s. And those choices in your 30s are going to show up in your 40s, and so on and so on. And so the sooner you embrace those ideas and build those foundational habits and really, give your human what it needs so it can thrive and function at optimal level, the more time you are going to get to enjoy all of those benefits. So I love that, coming out of the gate, you recognize that. I think there might be a shift going on, societally, hopefully, but it's going to be slow, like everything is. I agree
with that, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. I didn't mean to just cut you off. But no, I totally agree with that. But I will say I made a lot of those bad decisions in my 20s and I learned things the hard way. And so now and I just turned 30 in September. So I'm just entering that new decade, but you feel different. And it's not like the mental subconscious thing. Like I truly believe age is just a number and, but also it's how you take care of yourself. And, even going into my 30s, like, oh my gosh, how did I do that 2 years ago? Or like, what was I even thinking? Like, how was I even operating? I actually don't know. So it's crazy, but I do agree that there is a shift going on, which is amazing, especially for us that are in the health and wellness space and that we do already embody this. We very much so value our health, not only mentally, but physically and emotionally and everything, because we can help those people that don't really know what we know, and I actually did a post today. It's just starting out simple. There's so much out there nowadays telling you to do this, try this. And it gets overwhelming when it's just move your body, drink water, get sunlight, like take care of yourself, start out simple, eat protein. And then you can start to find what works for you and then what doesn't. Everyone's different, but ultimately the basic, simple habits of health, pretty straightforward.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is I've been preaching the basics for 28 years, but nobody likes the basics because the basics don't give you this amazing overnight instant result. And that's what people are looking for. And yet if you just get back to the basics and do them consistently, you will feel better. And so again, that's all about the mindset shift, right? Getting out of this idea that, oh, there's a magic diet or a magic workout, or if I just journal, all else I have to do is just journal and then I'll be great. Well, no, that's the start of it, right? There's all of these layers and elements to the process. And until you're doing all of them, you're not going to be optimal. You'll get better. You'll be growing. It's once you've locked in all of those things that you can really start operating at that higher level. I had brunch with a group of ladies yesterday, and I think there were 4 decades represented. We were just all kind of going through, where we are in life, what we're grateful for. And we're all in different positions, not just like in the corporate or, in the professional world, but even just with our own health, with our finances, with our own mental health, we're all in very different places. The younger one, she's in her 30s. She's like, I feel like everything is just so perfect. It's locked in, like making great progress with this and this and this. And I just feel like everything's great. And, I know probably something bad is going to happen, and I said, oh, no, not probably something bad is going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. That's called life, right?
Yeah.
And I, years and years ago, stopped looking at things as good things and bad things. They are life things. This is life. And if you only want to show up when the things in life are good, you're probably going to be missing out on half of your life. And so maybe instead of assuming something bad or, oh, nothing bad will ever happen to me because look, my life's amazing. Why would it ever change? Well, because life is going to bring you things, whether you ask for them or not. And it's about what you're going to do in the face of those things. So maybe get out of this idea of this is good and this is bad and just look at it as this is life. And what am I going to do in the face of life? Because that is what you control. So Kayla, I love the title of your book, Always Squeezing Lemons, Taking Responsibility to Define Your Own Success. So let's talk about what's in the book and some of maybe those basic steps that someone can start to maybe redefine what success looks like for them.
Yeah. Even kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying, like one thing that I'm very much so relay in the book is that success is subjective. Just kind of, as you said, good and bad things are subjective. And so is failure. And like really when we can have that paradigm shift of understanding that, life is life, you can define it as good, you can define it as bad, but ultimately there's always going to be some sort of silver lining for the bad. And there's going to be some learning experience for the good. And, you don't experience the highs of the highs without the lows of the lows. And really that's like through my book, it's modeled setback to, you have to have setbacks to have comebacks. And, failure is the other side of success and they don't come without each other. And I think that's so important. And we avoid that discomfort. And when we avoid discomfort, we avoid achieving success. We avoid, feeling failure, and all of it is extremely important, but it's even like the negativity. We're going to think negative thoughts, but you don't let them hinder you. It's the same thing. If, you fail, don't let it just knock you down, get back up. And, through my book, I talk about my stories and my experiences and write them in a way that is very much so as the readers can use it and like feel like they're in their own story and apply it to their own life. And at the end of each chapter, there's 12 chapters. I have a lemon drop, which is like the key takeaway of the entire chapter and kind of the message to kind of sit with. And then I also have a journal prompt. So it's something that's kind of interactive. You can obviously use it for yourself. It's been really cool to hear the feedback of readers saying, oh my gosh, I started journaling because of your book, or your journal prompts got me journaling again. And I'm super excited, just things like that, which has been really awesome to hear from readers. But yeah, I mean, and even like what I said earlier, it's the radical responsibility mindset. And when you realize you can be the cause, problem, and solution for everything in your life, your world changes. And I really drill that home throughout my book. And, a lot of it shows the heartbreak. It's very raw. It's very vulnerable, but it also is written in a way that, you should feel seen, you should feel heard, and you should realize that success is defined by you and you only. What my definitions of success is very different to anybody's, and that's okay. And it should be that way. And that's what makes us all different. That's why we all have a different purpose in this life. But we do the universe and this world a disservice when we don't actually live through that true purpose, or when we're not willing to identify it and make the changes and the actual actions that are necessary to really start living that way.
I love all of that. And I know somebody is listening thinking, well, that's really easy for her to say. She probably had a really easy life. She had a great upbringing, right?
Yeah.
Like, all the things just handed to her. Yeah, she had like some heartbreak, but she didn't have any real challenges in life. So of course it's simple for someone like her to do that. What is your response if somebody has that thought?
That's just a naysayer, judgmental. You don't, here's the thing. I'm a positive person. I don't sit there and tell you all the struggles that I've had to overcome. I don't talk about, the behind the scenes, behind the curtain stuff, because quite frankly, that's just for me to deal with. And, I was raised very well. I didn't have a relationship with my dad till I was 21, so there's a lot of things that, it's not that I've uncovered my things, but I don't blast it out there for everyone else to be like, oh, I'm sorry. I hope everything's okay. I focus on what I'm doing to be able to make more impact and how I can get there, and everybody's one chapter in my book is your problem is your problem. And I think if you want to compare my problems or your problems to somebody else's much larger problems, then you're never going to deal with your own problem. Yeah. If I compare my life to somebody starving and dying in a foreign country, we're not on the same thing, right? But then all I'm going to be doing is, well, I don't have any problems, and then I'm not dealing with my problems. And so that's where we get caught up in this cycle of judgment, comparison, and, rather than just taking control of our own lives and dealing with our own shit. We all have it, and I think that's what's so important. And, if somebody else wants to take the time to compare my story or somebody else's story and say, oh, it's just not enough, well, then you're clearly just not doing your own work. And, love to help you, but you got to be willing to make the first step to help. And I think that's one of the biggest things that, even when people talk about like, well, how can you help the people that are just kind of in that victim role mentality, or, they're just not really there yet. Like, I can't do anything to help anybody that doesn't want to be helped. I can help you if you're willing to take that step. I can get you over that line. But if you're not willing to take that first step yourself, then I don't really have anything for you.
Yeah, no, that's it, right? Is you have to do the work, and you have to be willing to do it, and willing to see all these things, and willing to accept reality, right? Because your reality is your reality. I mean, I would say I had a great upbringing, amazing parents, wonderful family. I didn't have any major trauma in my life, right? Just, I had kind of your standard Midwest 1980s childhood. It was, by all accounts, it was lovely. And yet we all have challenges. So I think you're right. It's when we dismiss and diminish our own because maybe they're not as bad as someone else's. Either then that person feels like, oh gosh, I should feel bad because I had such a great upbringing and yet I'm still not, making progress like I should. Or maybe it is the other person who has had significant trauma. And I will never dismiss or diminish or discount that. There are some situations where your work is going to be a lot harder than somebody else's work. And yet it doesn't matter. because it's your life. So
exactly.
It's still about accepting where you are, where you came from, what you got to work on, and then deciding to do the work. And yeah, there's all kinds of avenues and people to guide you through that. Until you are willing to be guided, you're not going to get anywhere. So absolutely love it all. Kayla, is there anything before we officially wrap up that we haven't covered that you'd like the listeners to know?
I think the biggest thing is obviously as we're talking a lot about mental health and, community and things like that. That's really why we started Moving Towards. And we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's really about cultivating a community for young professionals to thrive. And we just had an event this past weekend. We had 85 plus people there. We did a Pilates class. We had vendors. We had raffle giveaways. We talked about overcoming burnout and building resilience. So it's really, getting a large group of growth mindseted individuals together to make them the best leader of their life so they can show up and be better leaders for other people in their daily life as well. And, we're just in Charlotte right now, but we're going to keep growing. We just launched our fundraising initiative, Operation 1 Million Journals. So it's a $10 donation for one journal. And so there's a lot of growing. There's a lot of really cool things coming with Moving Towards. So if there's somebody out there that's looking to join a really amazing, impactful community that we're looking to really blow it out of the water here, definitely connect with me. I would love to share more details, tell you about the vision, the plan, and, kind of the work that we're doing.
Well, if you need any old ladies, Gen Xers to mentor, I am so in on what you're doing.
I love it.
Amazing. I love it. Let me rephrase. Few things inspire me more than hearing a Gen Z. Are you Gen Z or millennial? You're Gen Z.
I'm a millennial.
Young millennial. Okay.
Millennium.
Right.
Millennium. Yeah, millennial.
Then hearing a young person who's figured it out and is now using her skills and talents and experiences to help others come along, because we need help. The generations behind me, it's not great. It isn't. And it's only going to change because people like you are going to create that movement. So I am all in on this and here for it. So yay.
I love it.
Yes,
thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate that. We'll definitely connect. I'd love to get with
Awesome.
you involved.
Awesome. We'll have all the links to all your things in the show notes so listeners can connect with you anyway and get your book. And yeah, this has been really inspiring. And I love wrapping up stress awareness and mental health and heading into Mental Health Awareness Month with this conversation. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And listeners, now you know what you get to do. You get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. We hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.